Greetings, booktubers. Welcome back to Grammaticus Books. So first off today, please excuse the non-shaving that's going on. It is Sunday. This will go up on Monday. But Monday I got to put on the monkey suit and run a razor over my face. So today's my day for a break from that. But today we're going to be talking about Barry Windsor Smith and the Freebooters. Specifically, we're going to be talking about this hardbound collection that came out in 2005. And it collects issues 1 through 9 of the original comic, which is called Storyteller. So 1996, Storyteller comes out. It's a collaboration between Dark Horse Comics and Barry Windsor Smith. They're trying to resuscitate the comic industry, which is in an apparent death spiral. And Barry Windsor Smith comes up with an idea to reinvigorate it, to do some new ideas. And that new idea is to put out a magazine that's 2 inches larger than a normal comic book, a little bit longer, and has 3 continuous stories, has 3 different stories in each issue that carry over into each subsequent issue. So people have 3 different things to look at and to do artwork that's just phenomenal on the bigger pages and with better stories. And it's a great idea, but unfortunately it doesn't go over well at all. What happens is that the large format comic book collectors, didn't know what to do with it. It wouldn't fit into the normal comic book bags. It wouldn't fit into the boxes. The price tag on it, because it was larger, was $4.95 a comic, which was a lot of money back then for a comic book. And then finally, the complaint that Barry Windsor Smith leveled against Dark Horse was Dark Horse didn't market it at all, and they didn't. And also that the comic book stores didn't know how to properly market it and had difficulty displaying it on their shelves because of the larger format. And that's true, because I went into a comic book store in 1996. I did see Storyteller up on the wall. And they had put it in the back all the way up on the top shelf because the only place it would fit was on that top shelf. And I know that I did balk at the $4.95 price tag on it and put it back up on the wall, which, like an idiot, I should have bought those. I regret it now that I don't have them. But fortunately, in 2005, Barry Windsor Smith decided to collect all of the Axis the Great stories out of those Storyteller magazines 1 through 9, and then publish them together in this really large format, a beautiful hardbound graphic novel, The Freebooters. The reason Freebooters or the Storyteller stopped is because the sales were abysmal, and Barry Windsor Smith himself pulled the plug on it after 9 issues, and none of the story arcs ever completed. And unfortunately, that gets reflected in here. Barry Windsor Smith includes some extra material in here, including an alternate start to issue 1, and some of the stuff, the comic book work that he was working on that never made it into issue 10. It gets close to wrapping it up, but it's not really in a completed format. So that is a bit of a drawback to this, but it is a great book. This is a story of Axis the Great, the greatest hero of the age of this sword and sorcery fantasy world. And he is now over the hill, vastly overweight, but still a dangerous guy. And he's retired and living in the city of Shahrazad, where he runs a bar/brothel. And there's a ton of humor in this book. It's really good. The book is put together very well. There's a ton of extra material. Like I said, there's 50 extra pages of artwork that never made it into Storyteller, including this first alternate start to issue 1, which has a black and white. Didn't get colored. It was inked, though. It's marvelous. Here's where the other main character, who is Aaron down here, he's a poet in search of Axis the Great. He wants to write poems about him and meet him. And he finds Axis on the field of battle, apparently dead, sitting on top of a camel, which he isn't. And then he and this tiny poet get into a fight, Axis and this poet. And it's a pretty humorous fight. And it's just great Barry Windsor Smith line work here in this black and white. And then it goes on into all the color episodes. But the main story is really this character, Aaron, who's a poet. He goes and he finds Axis the Great at his bar/brothel. And the 9 issues are about Axis and this poet interacting. Their interactions as, 2 vastly different guys. It has very similar ties to Archer and Armstrong. But according to Barry Windsor Smith, this actually came before Archer and Armstrong. And that Axis the Great influenced Archer and the Armstrong comic book and not vice versa. And then into this sort of interplay between the poet and Axis when the Caliph of Shahrazad, who he likes to rob periodically, you interject in an evil wizard right over here. And of course, the evil wizard comes in, and then you get the main antagonist to the story, whose name is Amun. And the artwork in here, like you would expect with Barry Windsor Smith, is just spectacular. That's why he did it in a large format in Storyteller, is so they could do splash pages like this. I mean, just look at that. Look at the level of embellishment in it. I don't know if that's a Barry Windsor Smith thing or a British artist thing, but it's just absolutely stupendous. And the colors in there, I really love the colors and the variations in those colors that he uses. Even though they are kind of pastel, it works beautifully. That's your first view of the city of Scheherazade, not including that first black and white episode, which never made it into Storyteller. And then you get like just some really great pages of action in here. And I'll try to flip a few of these up for you so you can see them. See page 62. Yep, I wanted to show you guys this one. So this shows Axis's, there's his bar down there, / brothel. Pretty spiffy place. So I'm guessing he did pretty well for himself as Axis the Great during his adventuring days. And then on the next one, you got a bar scene, a bar fight in the Ram and Peacock. That's the name of his bar / brothel. So you got a big bar fight scene in there. And then we'll go to page 82. And you get to see Axis in his heyday, when he comes in and he fights the god Amun-Ra for the first time and saves the city of Scheherazade, indebting the caliph to him basically for the rest of his life. And there's a lot of back and forth in this story between Axis and the caliph. And it's pretty humorous. Like I said, there's a lot of humor that gets injected into here by Barry Windsor Smith. Some of it is a little heavy-handed, but a lot of it really hits on the mark, and it brings a levity to this book that I really enjoyed, that you don't get in a normal fantasy novel. And so the last page I was going to show you guys here is 132. And it's an airship floating over the city of Scheherazade in the middle of the night. And that's just great stuff. Wonderfully imaginative. Beautiful work by Barry Windsor Smith. And at the end here, you get this little portrait shot of Axis. So that's the story. This is the book. It's a fantastic collection. If you have a chance to pick this up, I highly recommend it. Although it is going to be a little pricey. Unfortunately, I don't think this is available as an e-reader. But I have a thesis. I'm going to put it forward. I'm going to support it. This is, in fact, not Axis the Great in the city of Scheherazade. This is, in fact, Conan the Barbarian in his retirement years in Shadizar the Wicked. And that is the story that's being told in here. 100% believe that. Dark Horse Comics did this original publication starting in 1996, but Dark Horse didn't get the rights to Conan until 2004. They had the rights from Conan for 2004 to 2018. So legally, Barry Windsor Smith couldn't call this guy, this action adventurer, he couldn't call him Conan. He had to come up with a different name. So you got Conan, you have Axis, and then if you just take a look at him, you've got an adventurer. He's wearing the sleeveless chainmail shirt. He's got the standard necklace that Barry Windsor Smith always liked to put on his Conan figure, his young Conan, and he's got the double horn helmet, just like Conan. And here, if I can get to page, 57? You see the sword that he's using, and it's the exact same sword that Barry Windsor Smith would always put into the hand of Conan the Barbarian. There it is right there. It's that same handle design right there that he always put in his Conan comic books and usually put into the hand of Conan the Barbarian. So I'll compare those images with some of these original Barry Windsor Smith Conan comics. So here you've got Conan the Barbarian, issue number 8, The Keepers of the Crypt. One of my favorite covers, by the way. I love it. And even though I know this isn't in Conan's hand, look at the sword with the hilt. It's identical. And that was the sword that he would always put into the hand of Conan the Barbarian in his books, or usually would. And then we've got issue number 16, which is The Frost Giant's Daughter by Barry Windsor Smith. And in it, you have Conan with the standard two-horned helmet that Barry Windsor Smith always liked to put on his Conan. One note here about the cover of this one. It's used a different inking technique. Instead of going for straight lines, it's a stipple technique that really makes the snow stand out and really gives it that nice Arctic feel and a very different feel to it than this inking that was done, which was done with straight line inking. Really like that cover. It's a classic cover. This is just a fantastic, I mean, this is one of those epic comic books, The Frost Giant's Daughter. If you get an opportunity to pick that up, I would highly recommend it. And then I think the other thing with the art-wise, showing the relationship between the two, I'm going to go with the John Buscema comic book. This is issue number 100 of Conan the Barbarian, Death on the Black Coast. But whenever Conan meant business, he was going to put on the old chainmail, sleeveless chainmail shirt, the two-horned helmet, and the big honking sword, and he's ready to rock and roll. Just like in Freebooters, aka Conan the Barbarian, and Shadizzer. And then the words that are used in there, you've got Shadizzer and then Shahrazad. It's the same thing. It's absolutely Shadizzer when he called it Shahrazad. He knew what he was doing. And then the wizard that's in here, the antagonist, who is Amun, is Thoth Amun from Conan. And let me find that page. So here's one of our protagonists, Arn the poet, and Amun, the high priest of Amun, comes to visit him. And then down here he says his name is Amun. He's actually the high priest of the god Amun-Ra, but this is going to be Thoth Amun. And take a look at him. He's the same Stygian from the comic books of Thoth Amun in Conan the Barbarian. He's exactly the same. And also that artwork, the style of artwork in here is very reminiscent. This is just kind of an aside. I'm going off on a tangent here a little bit. But Conan versus Rune, I think this is done 1 year earlier, 1995. And you can see it's the exact same art style for Conan versus Rune that he was doing in his Freebooters. So that's it. That's my case for Conan the Barbarian is actually Axis. Axis is actually Conan the Barbarian, I should say. This is a really good comic. There's a ton of extra material in here. And I especially like that black and white alternate version to episode 1 of Storyteller that he did at the meeting, which didn't make it into Storyteller, which you get with this episode. And then you have Valkyries that come down to pick up the slain at the end of it. And this is a very humorous fight. Like I said, there's a lot of humor interjected into these comics. And let me get to bear with me while I get to the Valkyries. Actually, I think I went past the Valkyries. They're right in between this page here. Why are you giving me such a hard time? There we go. And there come the Valkyries down, the choosers of the slain. Beautiful stuff. If there's a weakness to this, Barry Windsor Smith, in typical Barry Windsor Smith fashion, when things weren't going well with it, you can tell that the energy started to go out of this in the later issues. A lot of the energy and the direction, it started to wane in the latter half of this book. Not the latter half, but I'd say the last quarter to an eighth of it is just not the same quality as the preceding 80% of it. But the preceding 80% and all the letters that you get and all the extra material more than make up for it. This is a really good book. If you have an opportunity to pick it up, I would recommend it. It is a bit pricey. I think this goes for about $100 right now is what the prices on Freebooters are. If you can get it for less than that, I would say jump on it. But that's it. That is Freebooters by Barry Windsor Smith. I always love talking about Barry Windsor Smith. And when you can tie something in with Conan the Barbarian, it's just an extra plus. It is the cherry on top of the pie. One thing is my last video, I was talking about the book Sapiens by Harari, a book that I really don't care for. You can go watch that video if you want the full explanation of why I don't care for it. But it started off in prehistory. In order to sort of get that bad taste out of my mouth, I went ahead and I picked up 4,000 Years Ago by Geoffrey Bibby. This is a book, it came out in 1962, and it's a study of what life was like, primarily in the Near East and Europe, and 4,000 years ago. And you can see it's a pretty lengthy book. But this book gets a lot of praise that not only is it just going to a lot of the academics and the research and the history of what it was like 4,000 years ago, but then Bibby will go in and will create stories like a novel, a small novelization of living in an ancient village in these different areas of the world, or being under attack by an army of chariots, that really brings it to life, and that this book gets a lot of credit for it. I'm really looking forward to reading this. I know I'm going to enjoy this a lot more than I did the Sapiens book. So that one's on my list there. But that's it. I want to get this up for Monday morning. I've been rambling long enough. So take care, be safe, and I'll catch you guys in the future.